Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate Day 390, April the 5th, 2018, Thursday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Oh my goodness. Three major stories to cover today and some other stuff that you'll find rather interesting, I'm sure. Not much time, let's get to it. First major story of the day, Chuck Ross at the Daily Caller. Devin Nunes is threatening legal action against the DOJ and the FBI for failure to comply with 24 subpoenas in all for documents related to the investigation of the Trump campaign. Nunes sent a letter to Rodenstein and Wray, giving them until the 11th of April to comply. Nunes says he will pursue all 24 subpoenas in federal district court. Oh my goodness. Now that can be a problem because if in fact he does take them to federal court and the judge rules that they must turn over these documents and they don't do it, it's a $5,000 a day fine. $5,000 a day for every day that they do not produce, and that goes all the way back to the date when the subpoena first began, which means they would already be looking at over $150,000, $160,000 in back fines on day one. Now, weeks and weeks ago, I told you to watch Devin Nunes. Why? Because he is the most dangerous type of person you will encounter in your life. He is the quiet assassin. He is one of those people that many of you have met, who talks very softly, never seems to get too excited, remains very calm and collected, while continuing to push his nose to the grindstone and keep driving and driving. He never backs up. He just keeps digging deeper and deeper. He doesn't back off. You can't scare him away. He's a man on a mission. As I told you weeks ago, I said, watch Devin Nunes. And this is why. You can see it when you watch him and watch his demeanor. He's got that look in his eye, and he also takes it very personally. Remember what Schiff Head did to him? Forced him to step back from his leadership position for 9 months while he was investigated because he went over to the White House skiff and looked at something without telling Schiff Head. But it goes much, much deeper than that. What is Nunes getting at here? Let me help you out with that. What Nunes is really looking for, and it says right here, you can see it in this statement here, he is threatening legal action against the DOJ and the FBI for failure to comply with a subpoena for documents related to the investigation of the Trump campaign. What is this telling us? Here is what this is telling us. Devin Nunes has figured out, that there may not even exist a document, an order from the FBI or DOJ to launch an official investigation, which would include the reason why. That's why they can't produce it. And he is beginning to believe that. And it may very well be true. They do not want to produce this document. You see, when you launch an official investigation through the DOJ or the FBI, it has to be official. They have to actually put out an order, a directive, in letter form, stating what the investigation is to be about, who would be the target or targets of the investigation, what will be the subject of the investigation, what will be the probable cause used to begin and justify the investigation. This is an official document that must exist. It better. Because if it doesn't, oh my, it means that a bunch of rogue elements of the deep state and the FBI, DOJ, and God knows who else went into a free-for-all, politically charged investigation with no official authorization. None. they need to produce this document. And if they don't, oh my goodness. Now, don't get this confused with the subpoena by Goodlatte, which, remember, Goodlatte says when he comes back from break on April 9th, he better have those tens of thousands of emails and texts between Page and Peter's been stroking us. They better be available to him when he comes back on the 11th. This is something different. This is Devin Nunes from the House Intel Committee. And he has finally discovered, through trying and trying, what he wants is the document that began the Trump-Russia investigation. He wants the official document that laid out the beginning of the investigation, why the investigation was being launched. This is big time. This is major, my friends. This is major. This is crucial. If they cannot produce a document, and they better not try to doctor one up after the fact, then, oh my goodness. You talk about running through the hallways with your hair on fire. You talk about people chewing their fingernails down to the quick. You talk about people heading for their lawyers' offices immediately. You talk about people falling on the sword, people coming forward to give information. You talk about all these things. These are the type of things that happens when you trigger something like this. Because this is the document that started it all. And it must be produced. And if they cannot, oh my goodness. Devin Nunes, the quiet assassin. I told you, watch Devin Nunes. He's a man of action. Let me tell you something else. He's a very smart man. He's not a former lawyer. He's not a lawyer at all. He didn't come from the corporate business world or anything else. Devin Nunes is a farmer. Oh yeah. And I know from growing up around farmers and a farming community, all my neighbors were farmers. I can tell you something about farmers. They're really, really smart. Don't look at a farmer wearing his overalls and t-shirt, looking like he doesn't have a pot to piss in, and think he's a dumbass. Let me tell you, my friends, I grew up around farmers. They're smart. They're really smart. They got a lot of common sense. Oh, and they can also do math. They know economics, and they know a lot of things. Never underestimate the intellectual capabilities and abilities of a farmer. These may be the smartest people on earth. If you don't believe me, drive out to a farm sometime and have a conversation with a farmer. You'll know what I'm talking about. These are very smart people. And Devin Nunes is a farmer, and he's digging. Oh, yes, he is. He's digging deep. And I do believe that he has now hit on the hot button, the launch button, the thing that could send this entire thing into orbit. They better produce that document, and it better be legitimate. Or, my friends, heads will roll all the way to the top. (2018) first quarter media ratings are in. Fox is the most watched cable network, and CNN is in the cellar. You didn't think they could go any lower? My friends, they have lost 30%. They're down 30% from last year's first quarter. And they were in the tank then, getting beat out by reruns of Yogi Bear. Now they've dropped even lower. Now, on the downside to that, the benefactor of this is MSNBC, because CNN has gotten so bad, so unhinged, that even left-wingers are leaving CNN. And they're headed to the only other place they can go now, MSNBC. And so they're benefiting in the ratings. Their ratings are triple CNN, quadruple CNN. So they are the benefactors. Not a single CNN show is even in the top 20 for cable news. The #1 most watched show in cable is Rachel Maddow. She is the benefactor of all those left-wing nutjobs who CNN is too unhinged even for them. So they're headed over to MSNBC, tuning into Mad Cow. And she's delivering Russia, Russia, Russia 24/7. It's all about Russia, Trump collusion at Rachel Mad Cow all day and all night. That's exactly right. But even Mad Cow only has 3 million viewers. I mean, that's tiny. Think about the size of the media in this country, how many people are in this country, how much media is in this country. She's a top-rated show on cable, only gets 3 million views. I remember, wasn't even 15 years ago, ABC, NBC, CBS would all have somewhere in the range of 7, 8, 10 million viewers. This is the top show on cable, only gets 3 million. Shows you how little people are tuning in to all media, network or cable. People are going other places to get their information. That's what this tells us. The dinosaur media is dying, and cable may die before the networks do. The networks may outlive cable. Everyone thought the cable would displace the networks, but that's not what this is showing us. It looks like the networks, while their ratings are also quite low compared to what they were 15, 20 years ago, or back in the golden days of television news, the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, you can just see the entire media, corporate media structure just collapsing. It's absolutely collapsing. Not just cable, network, everything, newspapers, they're collapsing. People are going other places to get their news. Absolutely unbelievable what we're seeing, what we are witnessing and living through. We're witnessing a complete paradigm shift in how people get their news and information. And we just talked yesterday about the fact that 77% of people believe that the news is putting out fake news. And keep in mind, only about 32% of the people, registered voters in this country, are registered as Republicans. So if only 32% are registered as Republicans and 77% believe that most the media is fake news, then that tells you there's a lot of independents and Democrats who believe they're being fed fake news, and they're right. The Democratic National Committee is beyond broke. FEC filings show that the total debt at the DNC now stands at $6.3 million. The RNC has zero debt. The RNC has raised 4 times more cash, and they have a lot more money on hand than the DNC. The DNC has $10.01 on hand. $10.01 on hand. The DNC is going bankrupt. I mean, that's the only way you can look at it. In 2018, the RNC raised $158 million. The DNC raised $42. But you got to keep in mind the DNC's operating expenses and what they spent trying to win 3 or 4 elections bankrupted them. They blew their entire wad on 3 or 4 elections. Now they have nothing. And they got the 2018 midterms coming up. Where are they going to get the money for that? They're going to borrow that too? We just talked about the fact that they took out a $60-some-odd million loan. My goodness. Tom Perez has got to be on very thin ice. Got to be. The Rotten Reverend. She was giving a talk in New York City on Tuesday night where she blamed the dishonorable James Comey and the Pizzagate conspiracy for her loss. She's back to that again. But I've never heard her blame the Pizzagate thing. I've heard her blame Comey before, but never the Pizzagate thing. But that's what she said Tuesday night. James Comey and the Pizzagate conspiracy cost her the election. My oh my. She also says that Putin is a misogynist. That's strange. If Putin is a misogynist, then why did all of his friends, his energy oligarchs, donate $148 million to the Clinton Foundation? And why did they give Slick Willie, her husband, the alleged rapist, $500,000 for a 1-hour speech? And why did she do the Russian reset? And why did she invite all those Russian tech guys out to Silicon Valley so that they could get the technology to give them massive advances in their missile capabilities? Why did she do that? If Putin is such a misogynist. Oh, she also, in that speech, she blamed Fox News for trying to impeach her. Well, first of all, you have to actually be the president before you can be impeached. And even if you were the president, Fox News can't impeach you. It actually takes the Congress to do that. But don't worry, Reverend. You're going to be indicted. Yes, indeed. Well, they say the caravan of people coming up from Central America is breaking up. Bullshit. They're not really breaking up. Oh, they're breaking up, but not in the way that they want you to believe. What they're doing is separating themselves out into much, much smaller groups so that they can span out much farther along the border and try to get in that way, because they know that trying to rush 2,000 people across the border is fairly obvious and it's pretty hard to do. You're going to get caught and stopped, especially when Trump just sent the National Guard there, or is sending the National Guard there. So what they're doing is breaking up into much smaller groups, spacing themselves out, and so that they'll try to get in and give themselves a better chance in much smaller groups. So don't believe this crap that you're being told that the Mexican president's now cooperating and he's going to break them up and they're not going to do it. Bullshit. They're headed for the border, my friends. They're headed for the border, and I'm not talking Taco Bell. And as I just mentioned, Donald Trump is going to be sending the National Guard to the border. Well, that's exactly what they're for. That's why we have the National Guard. It's about time, after all these years of training, we allowed them to do their jobs. Very well done. I would line the entire border with the National Guard if I had to. And he says he's going to keep them there until he gets the wall built. Oh yeah. That's why we love him. Donna Brazile has commented on the 44 Democrats that waived the background checks for the Awans. Oddly enough, she says that she hopes that Mueller will get to the bottom of it and suggest that the Russians may have had something to do with it. You have got to be kidding me. First of all, Mueller ain't investigating the Awans or Debbie Blabbermouth Wasserman Schultz or the DNC or anything else. Donna. And the Russians didn't have a damn thing to do. What are you suggesting, that it was the Russians that signed all them waivers, or what? Put a gun to the head of these Democrats and made them sign these waivers? What, KGB infiltrated the Democratic Party? What exactly is she saying here? This woman is completely unhinged. Where in the world do you tie these together? Well, we know more about the YouTube shooter. She was a 38-year-old leftist and vegan activist. She was angry because she felt she was being discriminated against by YouTube. Her name, of course, Nassim Agdam. Of course, we know that her brother and her parents had both called police to report her. And they spoke with her just about, the night before or shortly before she did this shooting of herself and 4 other people who thankfully are alive. They are injured, but they are alive. And but yeah, her brother and her parents called the police. Said, yeah, they think she might be going to do something. And what's going on with this? I saw a short video clip of her. I'm not sure where she's from, but I would assume somewhere in the Middle East. She doesn't speak very good English, and apparently she was into all kind of left-wing activism, but also was into like health, nutrition, exercise, this type of thing, and that's what she was promoting on her YouTube channel. But her YouTube channel would have links to her website where she was promoting products that were anti-big pharma, natural products, natural healing products, things and such. And so she believes that this is why she was being discriminated against, was because she was pushing things that were anti-big pharma and things like that. So she believes that's the reason that she was shut down or censored. Well, let me tell you what, Ms. Agdam, even though you're dead, you can't actually hear this, but YouTube is censoring a lot of people, and mostly people on the right, by the way, along with Google, who owns YouTube, and Facebook, and especially Twitter. So how does it feel? Ron DeSantis wants an investigation of Debbie Blabbermouth Wasserman Schultz and the Awan brothers scandal. Now, actually, the Oversight Committee did actually begin some sort of an investigation into this months and months and months ago, and they actually did bring in some like tech guy to talk to him and tell him what he thought about it and all, and about the security breaches and all these sort of things and what the liability could have been. And we had a report on that back months and months ago, and it just kind of died. I mean, it just, you know, it's the story that just never goes anywhere. I mean, it can't really seem to gain any momentum despite all the incredible, overwhelming evidence that was laid out against Imran Awan in his initial hearing that we covered here on TowerGate. But it just seems to have hit the quicksand. It doesn't really go anywhere. And so who knows what's going on. But yeah, DeSantis wants an investigation. Guess what, Ron? We all do. Who's running that committee? Oh, Trey Gowdy. I'm sorry, Trey Gowdy is head of the Oversight Committee. Let's see. I know we have some Trey Gowdy fans out there, and that's okay. That's okay. It's all good. We love you. Uh-oh. Mueller and Rodenstein have a problem, and it's a big problem. Do you remember about 2 weeks ago when I told you that Manafort's attorneys went into court and filed a briefing with the judge asking for the charges to be dropped because their argument was that Mueller did not have the authority to pursue Manafort's financial dealings based on what he was put in place to do, which was to investigate Russia collusion and things and such. Therefore, he didn't have the authority to go into Manafort's private business affairs. That was what the lawyers for Manafort, the argument they were making. Well, we know that here last week, a week after that, Mueller responded by producing a letter written to him, which is described as a memo from Rodenstein to Mueller, giving him the thumbs up to go after Manafort and his business dealings, specifically with the Ukrainians and Ukrainian government or Ukrainian lobbyists or what have you. Well, you're going to like this one. As it turns out, the date on that memo from Rodenstein to Mueller giving that authorization has got a date on it. You want to know what the date is? Something tells me you do. The date is August the 2nd, 2017. Uh-oh, that's a problem. You know why? Because the raid on Manafort occurred about 2 weeks before that. The raid on Manafort was on July the 26th. So almost 2 weeks after the raid on Manafort is when the memo from Rodenstein to Mueller occurred. That's a problem. If the letter, the memo from Rodenstein, is what gave Mueller his authority to ransack Manafort and start investigating him, it's a real problem when the raid occurred 2 weeks before the letter. And the investigation was probably started long before that. Uh-oh, that's a big problem for Uncle Bob and Rodenstein. Something tells me Manafort's lawyers are going to have a field day with this one. I'm telling you, Manafort's going to probably beat the rap on this too. Everyone's going to beat the rap on Uncle Bob because he's a moron and he's corrupt and God is not on his side. He's on our side. I know. In an interview with Israeli TV, an Israeli TV network, Slick Willie Jefferson Blythe Clinton, the accused rapist of the rotten Reverend Clinton, admitted that he tried to help Shimon Peres defeat Netanyahu in the 1986 election. And Clinton said that he tried to do it in a way that didn't overtly implicate him. Could it be that the Clintons were meddling in the Israeli election? Well, according to Slick Willie, they were. Oh, yeah. What a dope. That's why they want him to shut up and go away. Him and Hillary both better shut up and go away. He's going to get not only both of them, they're going to get both of them thrown in the pokey. They're going to take a hell of a lot of people along with them. They're like walking schlep rocks. They're like leprosy. Hey, congratulations to young Hitler, David Hogg. Congratulations, young Hitler. You have displaced Barack Obama as the best gun salesman ever. In fact, you're probably going to be awarded Gun Salesman of the Year, little Hitler. That's right. NRA memberships are up 30% since you started your campaign, Mr. Hogg. Gun sales are skyrocketing. There you go. The little Führer, David Hogg, Gun Salesman of the Year. Couldn't happen to a nicer dope. Chicago has passed a new law banning assault weapons in high-capacity magazines. Residents have 60 days to turn them in, or the police will confiscate them. Guess what else they have in Chicago? Gun registration. There you go. So when people say, oh, well, what's the big deal about registering? I don't see the big deal about There's the big deal about registering your freaking guns. First, they have to know where they are and who's got them. And once they got that, then they come for your guns. And what happens once your Second Amendment rights are gone? Every other right you have goes right behind it. That's right. Read your history. That's why we should never submit to gun registration. Let's see how that works out. Apparently, it's going to be the police who are going to be the ones sent out to confiscate those weapons from those people in Chicago. I don't know if it'll end up in the courts or how ugly this thing could get, but I certainly wouldn't want to be one of those cops that have to go knock on somebody's door and say, I've come to get your guns. I know you have them. Because we register guns here, and we know you got them. Where are they? I would just tell them that I've named all my guns, Paco and Luisa and Luigi or something, and tell them that they're just simply undocumented. They're fine. They're undocumented. Can't do anything to them. Now, a huge story. Huge story. And this could also unearth some crazy stuff, man. This could take things into a whole new direction. And it's an angle I haven't quite looked at yet, but it's one I'm certainly thinking about now. So I want to give a big hats off to a great journalist, Elizabeth Voss. Haven't heard much from her recently, but she broke some really big stories back in the summer and fall of 2016. She writes for Disobedient Media. I am going to provide a link. I don't provide a lot of links. I usually just tell you what my source is. But in this particular case, I'm going to provide the link to this story because it's one of these stories. I can touch on it. I can give you, some details, the general idea of the story, but you gotta read it for yourself. It's well worth it. I know you'll enjoy it. I know you will. So I'm going to provide the link right there. I'm just going to put the link there. I'm not even going to put anything else in that box right below my video. The link will be there. Click on it. Click on that link and go read this story by Elizabeth Voss. It is titled, All Russiagate. Let's see, what does she title this? All Russiagate something or other leads to London as evidence of Joseph Misfud's links to UK intelligence. Basically what she's saying in this story is that as you look more and more at Joseph Misfud, who's known as the dossier source B and D, you see more and more when you look at this guy who we're told is some kind of Russian intel asset. But as you look more and more into it, as Elizabeth Voss points out in this story, you see that his ties are not to Russia at all. In fact, he denies that. Says he's not the source of the dossier or what was put in the dossier, that he didn't say any of the things that are supposedly accredited to him. And in fact, Papadopoulos was convicted of lying about that. So possibly even Uncle Bob doesn't believe that Misfud told Papadopoulos these things. But more importantly, what it's beginning to look like is that Mr. Misfud is almost certainly British intelligence, not Russian. And as she lays out this story, which you must read, that's an order. because it's going to come into play in future TowerGate videos. You're going to want to read this story so that when we go farther into this, because I'm going to start digging more myself into this line of reasoning, and it'll really help you if you read this article for where we're going to go from here, because this requires a shift. It requires a shift in moving into this direction. But just a few things that we can point out that's in this article, but there's much more. But of course we know that Misfud was shown as to be source B and D in the dossier. Of course, he denies this. He denies ever being connected to the Russian government or Russian intelligence. Apparently, Mueller believes him. But it appears that he does have ties to the United Kingdom intelligence. Now, we know that the head of GCHQ came over here and met with Brennan in the summer or fall of 2015. They were conducting surveillance on Trump for Brennan. In April of 2016, Misfud allegedly discusses dirt on Clinton with Papadopoulos. Misfud, of course, denies this, and Papadopoulos was charged by Uncle Bob for lying about this, which means they probably interviewed Misfud. Mueller's team probably interviewed him, and he said, "That's bullshit. I didn't tell Papadopoulos anything like that. He's making it up. He's nuts." And apparently they believed him, because they charged Papadopoulos, who's now a free man apparently. Doesn't appear to be worried about getting sentenced or anything. The following month, after Misfud allegedly discussed this dirt with Papadopoulos, Papadopoulos speaks with Alexander Down the Hatch Downer. You know, that Australian ambassador who likes to wear nylons and ladies' high heels. He was the Australian ambassador to the UK in July of 2016. Now, Downer, in July of 2016, shares this information with the FBI, according to the FBI. They say that's what started their investigation. It's when Downer contacted them and said, "Hey, I just had a drunken conversation while I was wearing a pair of high heels and nylons in a bar, upscale bar in London. I was talking to this cat named Papadopoulos who claims to be on the Trump team. And you know what? He was introduced to me by an Israeli Foreign Service agent. And guess what he told me? He told me about this dirt that the Russians have on Hillary Clinton." But we now know that Alexander Downer, of course, was ambassador to the UK. And we also know that he worked for this private, secret, cloak and dagger intelligence firm in the UK, which is known to be a place where ex-spies, retired British spies, go to get some work. Then we have Rob Goldstone, also from the UK, a publicist, music publicist, who sends Trump Jr. that crazy email to set up the Trump Tower meeting. We have Misfud telling an Italian newspaper that he's a member of the Clinton Foundation. Haven't been able to prove that, but that's what he says. We have Christopher Steele, former British spy, who supposedly compiled the dossier. We know that he shared the dossier with British intelligence. Or did they share it with him? We also know that he shared it with the FBI on 2 occasions in Rome in July and September of 2016. We also know that Misfud was a lecturer at Link University. That's the spy school where all the spies go to learn, where you find a lot of American intelligence people hanging out, as well as British intelligence people, like Misfud. We also know that Papadopoulos spent some time there in the summer of 2016. It makes you ask the question, when you look at all these connections to the UK government, what was one of the big things Trump was talking about during the 2016 campaign? He was talking about Brexit. Who would John Brennan of the CIA use to do his dirty work? Oh yeah, and what else did he do? He's the one who passed on this information to Harry Reid of the Trump-Russia thing and got it all started in the Congress. That was Brennan. And we know that Strzok and Page, from what we learned last week in their text messages, knew that Harry Reid was going to send those letters. My friends, Boom. There are things coming. There are things coming. Hold on. Prepare for turbulence.